Hey, welcome back to the show. And joining us today is returning guest Lobo Tiggre, speculator, analyst, and publisher of the Independent Speculator. Lobo, great to see you. How you been?
Happy to be back on the show. Happy to see gold back over $5,000, and happy to hear a proper tigre.
Well, I took a little bit of Spanish in high school, moons ago, but I haven't really since practices. So, but when I can, I want to represent it. Well, you know, obviously there's a myriad of things going on, and obviously as it relates to the financial markets, global economy, even geopolitics, state of society. Would love for you to provide your latest high level overview.
All right. Short question, long answer. I'll try not to wax too rhapsodic. The short version actually would be that I'm standing by my view that all paths forward lead to inflation. The MAGA agenda in the U.S., and I'm not taking sides, agree with it, love Trump, hate him, doesn't matter. The agenda is highly inflationary. And even if it succeeds, before it succeeds, the money printers are burning now at wartime levels, and supposedly peacetime in the greatest economy ever, hottest country in the world, needs multi-trillion-dollar deficits somehow. That's inflationary. In Europe, we've got rearmament. China's trying to stimulate Europe. Back in Europe again, Russia's war is inflationary. You blow stuff up, we've got to replace it. All of the situations around the world. And I think, honestly, we're still dealing with the knock-on effects from the COVID lockdowns and so on, at which they just threw trillions and trillions of dollars and euros and yuans and whatnot. So that's all playing out, I think. And if there's one thing I underestimated, that was really just how much fiscal dominance there already was in the system. And I expected there to be more weakness, more economic weakness in previous years, but the money printers were just going so strong. They papered right over it. And now there's reasons to be concerned about the economy. Great respect to David Rosenberg and folks like that. But, experience has shown us not to underestimate that fiscal dominance or Michael Howell's global liquidity, however you want to frame it. I do think that's the dominant theme of the days. It is inflationary. That is bullish for anything that governments can't print or lend into existence. Obviously, that includes monetary metals, but I think it includes other real assets. And I particularly like those critical minerals that are in short supply.
Could you unpack those critical minerals as well as those assets that you see as favorable?
You mean more specifically? So the monetary metals are gold and silver. I don't need to beat that to death. It's pretty obvious. I specified in short supply. There's all these lists of critical minerals, but some of them are not in short supply. Lithium, for example. It's right after hydrogen on the table of the elements. And not only is it abundant, but we've got mothballed capacity that would not take a long time to bring on. So it's one of those things where high prices can cure high prices really quick. Those are assets waiting for just enough of a higher price to be able to come back online. I see nickel in a similar way, but more structurally constrained. My two favorites are copper and uranium. I also think that oil gets there. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it looks like it's carving out a bottom. I subscribe to Rick Rule's thesis that the industry has been so hated and starved for capital long enough that is going to have an impact on supply going forward. Eventually, maybe by 2060, we don't need oil anymore, but that's a long way down the road. I know Doomberg has a thesis on oil equivalents. I think he's probably right, but that's also a multi-decade thesis. So in the nearer term, I think Rick's thesis of hate having an impact on the supply-demand balance in the oil patch matters. So that's something I'm looking at. Other things, it kind of depends on how they play out. And every once in a while, people get excited about, tungsten right now or molybdenum a while back. But these oddball metals tend to be moved by unusual events. One new supply out of China that we didn't know was coming, or Indonesia or somewhere else, can really alter the balance in these markets. So it's tricky. Long story short, my favorites right now are copper and uranium, and I'm looking to go into the oil patch next.
Noted. And as it relates to some of the geopolitical turbulences going on, obviously, we have the incident, we have the situation down over in Mexico going on, and surely regime change in Iran at some point. What are some other? I mean, if you want to cover that and perhaps other things that you are watching and tracking, and how that will impact the markets.
Well, we could talk all day about these different things. I don't want to tell science fiction stories about what might happen. So let's tick off a couple notable things. In Mexico, I mean, we already had a government that was hostile to mining. And I know that not in all the entire world is about mining, but that is my wheelhouse. So we had a government that was already hostile to mining, but it seemed like things were starting to get better. And then we had that horrific incident with a whole bunch of people from a Canadian company getting kidnapped, and some of them killed, some still missing. Um, is that one off? Did somebody get, pissed off the local drug lord or something? We'll never know. It has been suggested, though, that this is pretty cold-blooded stuff. But suppose these kidnappers were sophisticated enough to short the stock, kill some people, and then profit from the stock tanking as it did. If that worked for them, why not do it again? I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying, when something like this happens, it's really worth tweaking your political risk model and taking that into account. I mean, country risk is the broader word, and as we've seen more recently with completely unrelated to mining, the blow up in the war on drugs in Mexico, having tourists shelter at home and in hot tourist destinations, that's never a good look. And even if it has nothing to do with the natural resource sector per se, if your physical security comes into question, that's just never a good thing. It's the sort of thing that investors flee. So, right now, I would not put any new dollars into anything in Mexico at all. I would wait for things to visibly be improving. And that would probably take some time. Sure. Could I miss out on the next big silver discovery in Mexico? Yep. But I'm happy to miss out on that if I also miss out on the next big abduction and mass murder or something really horrific that might happen. It's just that sort of thing doesn't happen in Ontario, right? And so I'm willing to make that distinction. As far as Europe goes, I mean, or the war in Ukraine just seems like other people's problem, but let's not forget that we're talking about nuclear powers on both sides, and things can go wrong there. I'm not, again, going to tell a science fiction story. I'm just going to say that someone made a famous promise to end that conflict in 24 hours. It hasn't happened yet. And it is the sort of thing that can go up, and people should have in mind in their bingo cards of political risk. The Middle East, that one is more imminent. Trump gave them 10 days. And I bet he wishes he hadn't, because, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who finds it easy to back down. And, that Witkoff said yesterday on various media that, they were surprised that Iran hadn't capitulated yet. And it's just sort of a gobsmacking remark. Like, really? These are religious fanatics? And you're surprised that they're not willing to compromise? And where's the off-ramp for them? Maybe the Ayatollah can go live in Moscow or something. He's a religious guy. Does he want to go live in Moscow? I'm not surprised that the situation has proven difficult. The one thing that makes me hesitant to just say, yep, it's going, the balloon's going down, we're going to bomb Iran again, and oil's going through the roof, is that I think that Iran made it clear that even if they couldn't strike the U.S., they could strike their neighbors. And the neighbors called up Trump and said, hey, we really don't want our oil infrastructure blown up. We don't want the Straits of Hormuz mined or ships sunk there. And I suspect that's why we appear to have this dithering now. So I honestly, I got to say, I don't know how that's going to play out. I think that Trump really cares about the price of energy. The latest great inflation report we had in the United States, everything was more expensive and gas was less. And that made inflation come out less than hope. So if you take away the cheaper gas, that's a problem with the midterm elections coming up. And I hate to be so cynical about it, but I do think that this matters a lot to the administration. And to me, that's why they seem so desperate to get some kind of deal, even if it has nothing to do with the massacres in Iran or anything, just some kind of deal. Hey, we won. And then we can de-escalate. Don't know how they're going to play out, but there's a chance that they do come up with a deal because they really, really want oil prices to stay down, and then oil falls off a little bit of a cliff, and there's a good chance that it goes the other way. I honestly don't know how that plays out. For my money, I'm on the sidelines. I'm going to watch that. If I miss a big surge on war, it'll come back again. That never lasts. And if we get a chance at cheap prices, I'll be glad to have the cash ready to deploy. Did I leave anything out? Oh, worries. Sorry, long answer. The big one is Taiwan. And I'm not saying this is imminent. It's not like Iran right now. But at some point, that sure does seem like something where push wants to come to shove. And you can say, okay, well, that's their problem on the other side. It's not. TSMC makes everybody's chips. That is a big problem if the fabs don't proliferate outside of Taiwan before she makes a grab. And I'm not predicting how that will play out. I'm just saying that is the big wild card. And if that happens sooner than anybody expects, batten down the hatches. That's not just little penny ante stuff. That's big game there. And by the way, for all of this stuff, completely aside from my speculations in mining stocks and whatnot, all of this makes me want to own gold bullion in my hand. I can hold it. It's a financial long for which there is no short. It's physical wealth. Silver too. I stack both. And in a world like this, I sleep better having that physical form of savings in my rainy day fund.
No doubt. Well, I mean, things are certainly, pretty volatile right now. You mentioned about the importance of the consumer, of the American consumer for the administration, and it just seems that those in power are in their own echo chamber more or less, and they are without really a grasp or an understanding of what I think most lay people, so to speak, have to deal with.
Well, sorry, let me push back on that. I hear you, and I know why you're saying that. I mean, Trump is out there telling everybody it's the hottest economy in the world. It's great. Everything's great. So it sounds just like Biden, who's like, hey, why are voters angry with me? The economy's great. I get the criticism, but I don't think that they're actually in the echo chamber. Like, what else can he say? Yeah, it sucks and it's my fault. Of course not. He's going to say what he's going to say, but if you look at what they're doing, and it seems to me that their actions communicate understanding. Their actions, like on the energy front, like, Trump is doing everything he can, it seems, to keep energy prices down and to do, it's not just drill, baby, drill. Like, that was a slogan. But what they're doing with nuclear energy, everything, coal, he's calling it clean, beautiful coal now, right? So never mind the words. The actions are saying, we know that energy is a really important part of inflation that matters to that consumer. It's part of this affordability issue, even if that's a Democratic host. They're still doing stuff to address it. So, sorry, I need to push back a little bit there because it's easy to criticize Trump. And by the way, I didn't vote for him, so I'm not defending him either. I'm just saying we need to be, I think, balanced and look at what's actually happening. And, politicians' lips moving, discount that.
No, I mean, that's obviously a valid point. You're reminding me of concern about him doing, having some type of boots on the ground over in Venezuela. Obviously, that turned into just kind of an in and out sort of thing. The same thing with the previous bombing of Iran, instead of a full on thing. But now we don't know what will happen. So yes, I agree with you on that front. Okay, gosh, wow, I'm taking it all in what you shared earlier there. It is very interesting. What is going on around the world, what's going on with consumers, the market, et cetera. What are perhaps some other things that you're tracking and following, and or conversations that you're having? I mean, surely you have a lot of great people that you are ideating with, and maybe you could give us a glimpse into some of those insights.
Okay, so some of the smartest people that I hang out with, we've all been concerned for some time about the AI bubble deflating, and there's nobody that I respect who hasn't seen it as a bubble, or at least a hyped up, overbought market. The question was, does it pop or does it deflate? And if it pops and the panic sets in and we get, a 2008 style waterfall event or a flash crash like 2020, just boom, down and then pick ourselves back up again because it's constrained to one sector. Hard to say, but it looks like for now that's not happening. Like we've had actually going on a month now of AI scare, the SaaS apocalypse, as they call it, of the software, having their lunch eaten by AI apparently. And as we're recording, just yesterday, it was a huge market fluctuation. Apparently, some short sellers put out a report expounding on the negative impacts of AI as it rolls out. Even if it's creative destruction, the destruction comes first. So that seems to be happening now. That is interesting because if before we had a question, well, is it going to blow up? In which case, we need to worry about a sudden sell-off. Or is it going to deflate? In which case, fiscal dominance, all that money's got to go somewhere. Then we have a more orderly retreat. And if it had popped, then everything would have got whacked. Even gold and silver would just take it on the chin like they did in 2020 or 2008, because everything gets whacked in that circumstance. But if it's going to deflate, then there's time for money to reallocate and say, well, what is working? And it's really interesting that, yesterday when this report circulated and people were selling tech and cryptos and all kinds of stuff, gold had a great day, another $100 day for gold, and silver was up even more. I forget what it was on a percentage basis, but something like twice what gold was doing, which is classic, right? Silver is gold on steroids when it comes to the magnitude of the moves. So that's really interesting to me, because if that's where we're going throughout this year, as the AI deflates and people are looking around, they're cashing out, taking their profits, whatever they have left, and saying, okay, well, what works? What is working now? Well, if gold is working, that becomes really interesting. And it's funny to me. And by the way, I'm not a Bitcoin hater. I'm not one of these people who anyway, I'm not a hater. I don't own it. But the gold 2.0 thesis never made sense to me. And it's interesting to me to see the talking heads on financial media. They're all saying this now. Well, clearly it's not gold 2.0. Even former advocates, the cheerleaders on CNBC that just seemed like they couldn't get enough about Bitcoin, right? Well, no, it's not acting like gold 2.0. It's something else, right? So there's another one, money coming out of AI, looking for things that are working. Copper's working, uranium's working, gold's working, silver's working. Some of my favorite metals are obvious candidates for that money. Same could be said for Bitcoin. Who knows where that bottoms? There are, even if you're pro Bitcoin, like you look at Bitcoin's history with the halvings and then, these huge sawtooths on the way up and then 50, 70% retracements, it could go much lower. And this time, like even if you're a Bitcoin maxi and you think at the end of the day, like the one ring of Mordor, Bitcoin's going to take over everything and be the only money left in the world. Like even if that's true, doesn't mean we won't have an 80% drawdown before that happens. And with all the money that went into cryptos via ETFs, the Wall Streetification, if you will, of this once rogue anarchist asset class coming into the mainstream, well, that subjects it to mainstream stupidities and panics and, oversoldishness that happens in the broader markets when people panic. So, with Bitcoin down 50% since its highs at just about a year ago, there's potential for a lot more selling here. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that setup is there. And then where does that money go? Especially if you're convinced, if the crypto narrative convinced you to distrust fiat and to like hard assets, well, I'm sorry, gold 1.0 becomes a really obvious answer. Maybe not if you're a Bitcoin maxi religionist and you can't tolerate the idea of gold. But if your idea is to make money and you're looking for, what's moving in the right direction, I think that makes a lot of sense. We could see a massive reversal of funds that flowed into Bitcoin coming back into gold 1.0. I think I lost track of your question, but that's some of what's on my. What are people thinking about? Yeah, these are some of the trends that we talk about.
Well, as it relates to Bitcoin and in light of the other, at some point, would love to hear your commentary because, of course, everybody's talking about the Epstein saga and obviously the implications that has on really everything, the fabric of society. There were, of course, emails references to Epstein being involved in Bitcoin's creation or helping to get that going, and it's interesting to see what impact that has had or will have on people's sentiment.
Well, there's a can of worms we can go lots of different directions from. But I think there's one thing here. This may or may not make me popular with anybody, but Epstein's one person. Epstein's web is hundreds of people, like really directly, intimately connected to his business enterprises. And their reach, what they were trying to do, basically looks to me like a giant blackmail operation to collect information on everybody and anybody in power that they could. And that is even larger. And then those people are having conversations. So if you've got maybe a few thousand people somewhat involved in this environment, what are 1,000 people going to talk about? Who would they not mention in one email or another? I wouldn't be surprised. There's this lady on YouTube who's a physicist who pisses off all the other physicists debunking all their theories and stuff. And apparently some people in the Epstein world talked about something she said about physics, like nothing to do with, everything that we hate about Epstein, but they mentioned some of her work in physics. And so she appears in the Epstein files. Does that mean she's a pedophile? Of course not. So I really want to encourage people, without question, I am not in any way, fashion, or form saying that a child sex trafficking ring is anything other than horrible, reprehensible, all that stuff. Even libertarians talk about consenting adults being a key word there, right? So bad. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you have thousands of people talking about what's in the news, what's going on. They're going to mention all kinds of things. So just the appearance of a name somewhere in some file in Epstein land it's not just not proof of guilt. It really should be taken with a grain of salt. I mean, they're going to imagine popular singers or sports fans. Can you imagine sports athletes, football stars or whatever? Can you imagine that their names are not somewhere in the Epstein files? Of course they would be discussed. So let's not get too carried away by this. Broader social significance, though, I think really the most important thing here is that, I think any adult who's been around for a while understood that there's always a dark side to every society. And the Epstein case just exposes that. Like the Me Too thing in Hollywood, separate. I don't think that's an Epstein thing, but it shows that dark underbelly. There's always corruption and crime and evil in every society. And I don't think this is unique to the United States. I don't think it's a condemnation of the United States. It was a global network. But I think it behooves us to remember and to be eternally vigilant and not sweep things under the rug. And maybe, what can we do? Can we change the world? No. Maybe the Almighty could do something about it. But down here, I don't really think I can, somehow abolish all evil. I can warn my children. I can do what I can to oppose it. And I can harden my assets in my life against repercussions from bad stuff happening around me. I guess, long story short, I'm just saying, let's not be naive. And this is a particularly ugly and smarmy bit of evil that we had our noses rubbed in like a puppy in training. But there's other evil in the world, and some of it does affect our finances, and we shouldn't be naive about it.
100% about that. Lobo, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on that you feel is not receiving enough attention these days, or that will help investors?
There are a lot of powder kegs around, and there are a lot of sparks around, and I'm wary of being, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Lobo means wolf. It's very undignified for a wolf to be a chicken. Okay, I can't do that. Not even a green chicken. But there's that's a lot of scary stuff. We just touched on some of it in this interview, and I mentioned, this really makes me glad to have my physical savings. And like, I literally don't have a savings account in the bank. I physically save in gold and silver bullion. That's my savings, and my liquidity in the bank is my checking account for expenses and stuff like that. Paid off my mortgage recently with some of my gains in gold and silver and uranium as well. And so that's, again, physical wealth that can't be, there's no short against my house anymore, right? That sort of thing. In the world that we're talking about, I really think it behooves people to think about this. And stacking gold and silver, that's great, but that's just the beginning. I think, hardening your life against really serious unpleasantness is a good step to take. And beyond cutting back on debt, as I have done. The other thing is something my old teacher, Doug Casey, really championed, and that is internationalizing your lifestyle. And I understand that not everybody can have a house in 5 different countries the way Doug does or whatever. But you could have a timeshare somewhere, right? You could set up a crib, you could make friends, you could, through your extended family, set up bank accounts in different places, get bank boxes in different places, or even just vault in different places. There's a lot. I don't need to wax too rhapsodic about it, but just the idea. At times like this, you know what? If you put some extra effort into hardening your life, not just your assets, but your life against the vicissitudes of a dangerous world, and it turns out to be all wasted, nothing bad happens. It's insurance, but if you do need it and you didn't get it done, you'll regret it. So I just want to encourage people to take this seriously. I mean, yes, I'm and my business is all about making money, but as a human being, there's stuff going on right now that is, if not necessarily immediately, imminently about to blow up, it's the kind of stuff that if it does, a day late is just entirely too late. So, please take this stuff seriously.
Absolutely. Lobo, how can people learn more about you as well as get in touch with you?
Well, on Twitter/X, I'm the Due Diligence Guy. You can look for me at Due Diligence Guy. And I think our little corner of the Twitterverse is actually pretty useful. I have a lot of followers who contribute interesting ideas and sources and links, and are generally fairly polite. Trolls are inevitable, but I do think that's pretty useful. On the website, independentspeculator.com, I have a free weekly digest that I put out. You may or may not agree with me, but if you want to find out how I think, that's the best way. And the one thing I can promise is if you sign up, we won't spam you with a flood of advertisements every day. I hate that sort of thing. You get one notification per week and see if you like it.
Well, I encourage people to check it out. Lobo, thanks for carving out the time. Enjoyed our conversation, and looking forward to getting an update from you as it relates to your latest thoughts here before long.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, I encourage you to like, share, and follow. And I always look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts. And until next time, take care and be well.